And family owned for over 50 years. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEALER1. Always open at Shealer.com.
Hi, I'm Matt with Fleet Feet Roanoke. I've enjoyed working with Ed Lane and the Virginia Talk Radio Network. But when they sold their Roanoke station, I was skeptical the partnership could still provide value. Months later, I'm thankful that Ed took the time to meet with me, discuss the right solutions, and a plan to invite his audience to Fleet Feet Roanoke. Now we're able to build a connection with that audience thanks to Ed's creativity. Stop by and see us at Fleet Feet Roanoke to learn more. We'd love to get to know you.
Email info@virginiatalkradionetwork.com to start growing your business.
Feel the excitement, experience the intensity. Castle Coliseum comes alive when Hokie basketball takes the court.
He made it on 1 foot. Lead, it's down.
From buzzer beaters to hard-fought battles, Virginia Tech men's and women's basketball takes on the toughest teams in the ACC.
Step up and in. Here come the Hokies. Castle erupts.
Don't just hear about it, be there. Tickets on sale now at Hokiesports.com.
Looking for that one place to find out information you want that used to be in the morning paper? How about trying the LynchburgPortal.com? On-demand news from Bill Trefiro. On-demand weather daily from VTRN in-house staff meteorologist Matt Ferguson. Classic hits from the 70s, 80s, and 90s on the Rewind 1039 stream. The best talk shows and CBS News every 30 minutes on the WIQO and WGNN streams. The best play-by-play and the Fast Lane with Ed Lane on the VTRN Sports WVGM stream. A business directory from the Lynchburg Business Alliance. Up-to-date events from the Lynchburg Tourism Site. Great discounts from InsaneRadioDeals.com and many more ideas on how to promote your business. And it can all be found on the LynchburgPortal.com. That's the LynchburgPortal.com.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app. 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
Just to keep it real here in the Fast Lane and to keep you on your toes for those that connect it, Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and it gets retweeted and reshared. I think you can do that now on Instagram at TJ_Wilkerson8. We greatly appreciate that, TJ. But we're going to flip this around. We were going to get into the weeds and talk about our TrostLaw.com fast take on Liberty women's basketball, which we will do. But flipping it around, we'll lead with a bigger story, which is this.
The haters say we get into the weeds. They may even say we get into the weed.
Smoke weed every day.
Nah, we love getting into the weeds to discuss some cool sports details here in the Fast Lane.
So we touched on this yesterday, a big picture overview for those who say we only get into the weed or into the weeds. Its big picture overview is yesterday from week 1 of college football. And that observation that in reality, offenses were behind defenses outside of the opening drives of the game, which are scripted. You have all offseason to work on it. You have a chance to look at other teams' film. South Carolina, great opening drive against Virginia Tech. After that, Hokies adjusted, Gamecocks kind of out of sync, and they were largely bottled up outside of the big play to Nick Harbor that he caught for a touchdown. By the way, the one that was initially ruled a touchdown was overturned. We have our great photo from Hudson Lane Photography at Fastlane Ed Lane on Twitter and Instagram, and it does show that the ball was bobbled in that. I've got a full collection of that. It'll be at Hudson Lane Photo. Cousin of mine who did some photography work and will probably be doing some more with us. We're collaborating with him on that. But he had a really good multi-sequence photo of the Nick Harbor one, which showed that the ball was bobbled. And once it was bobbled, you have to then reestablish possession in bounds. And Harbor reestablished possessions, but the body was out of bounds. So just for the record on that. But inevitably, the dam broke defensively. But for the most part, Virginia Tech defense really showed out well. Then there's Virginia. Started slow. Once they got it going, they were in great shape. I've even had Virginia fans who've come up to me and said that they're amazed that they might actually have to feel a level of optimism, or the word that we curse out, hope, in the fast lane, because they look like a team that, the offense came together this quickly. But North Carolina, great opening drive. It'll be epic. Vibes were high in Chapel Hill. And then everything else happened after that. Most notably, TCU rattled off 41 consecutive points. So adios to that concept of being able to do everything. Clemson, great opening drive. After that, offense looked like it needs a lot of work. TJ was there, covering it at TJ_Wilkerson 8. But the one most notable to our backyard are the Liberty Flames. And we're throwing out JMU against Weber State as the Duke started hot, which they should, and to their credit, they did start hot against a 1AA FCS school, unlike the Liberty Flames, who really did not after that opening drive, which resulted in the missed field goal, 18 plays, 7.5 minutes, but they didn't have points to show for it, and they wouldn't score again until right before halftime, and on a short field because of the CJ Bazile strip sack and fumble recoveries. He did it all to help set Liberty up. So it begs that question. Liberty's offense came to light in the fourth quarter. How much do you expect them to get better from week 1 to week 2? I know Jon Manson, Richie Longshots, and the crew on the A Sea of Red podcast were discussing that concept. We will hear John's perspective 5:45 today here in the Fast Lane. But there are a number of things that just jumped out about Liberty and their challenges so far. One of those from Jamie Chadwell, just the most blunt assessment that on a big picture level, there is an expected level of improvement.
What I need to see, what our team needs to see, is more just a level of intensity, consistent coming out the gate with that. I think we've sort of thrown our way around a little bit, just trying to find our way. You can't do that in college football anymore. You can't, everybody's good. There's a lot of parity, and so we got to come out of the gate faster. And so that's been our one thing that we talked about with the team. I thought we finished strong, and I don't think we played terrible for 4 quarters by any means. I think there's some good football in there, but we could have played so much better. But I thought we just filled our way in that first half, just trying to find our way. That's what I need, and I'm hoping our improvement will be in the second, and I expect it to.
I would expect a lot of teams that struggled offensively to make that jump. Granted, the competition will be different. Liberty gets more stiff. I know Jacksonville State is their week 2 opponent. It's on the road just after 12 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. But this is not the Rich Rod Jacksonville State that ran right through Lynchburg last year with over 300 yards on the ground and controlled the game. This was not that Jacksonville State team. They still could beat Liberty. I think it's still going to be a tough game. Point spread is hovered under 7. I've seen it anywhere from 4.5 all the way up to 6.5, depending on when and where you might look. But that's kind of an indication that they expect Liberty to win, but not necessarily easily, at least from the sports book experts that put those lines out there. But for Liberty, that's the most obvious thing. And we're going to see a lot of that. Now, there are going to be teams like Clemson, which has a rent-a-victim this coming week. South Carolina, which has South Carolina State. They're the team that played Virginia Tech. Texas, whom you heard against Ohio State on your home for the best play-by-play, the VTR and Sports app as well. I mean, those teams have rent-a-victims. I fully expect them to start out fast and then be able to call the dogs off late, which is kind of what you envision in that scenario. But I think it's different for Liberty. First of all, it's a more challenging opponent, but it's kind of that dreaded spot for Jacksonville State. If I'm thinking about this from the Gamecocks angle at Jack State, this is a Liberty team that wants revenge off last year, brings back not everybody, new quarterback, some new players in the backfield, wide receiver who were on that roster, but the role changes. But there's some guys on defense for Liberty as well who want to elevate their performance for Liberty. And there's so many factors that go into this. But the one thing Jamie Chadwell noted is the intensity. It wasn't necessarily the effort wasn't there, but the intensity. There's effort where you're still putting in effort. But then there's extra oomph and intensity. And if there's any sport where oomph is necessary in certain areas at least, it's football because of the physicality element to it. And that's the thing for Jamie Chadwell. And I get it, but he elaborated on that specifically as it relates to the offensive line for the Flames. And I think this is a reasonable concern. The O-line didn't open up holes early in that game against Maine. They did later. They wore down Maine. But when you have a size disparity advantage, the way the Flames had against Maine, and the way they, well, frankly, have against Jacksonville State and a lot of teams, they got a pretty big offensive line over on the mountain. You expect more from your returning players in particular. And that is why Jamie Chadwell called them out yesterday to a certain extent.
So I thought we just played timid. And then some guys that have played football for us didn't play very well. And that's more disappointing to me is some new guys that hadn't been with us actually played pretty good. But the ones that have been here didn't play up to their standard and our standard we have for that. And that's, I think, the disappointing thing. And so we got to get that fixed as we're going into our next opponent who's really good. And so I was just, and I think our whole side of the ball was disappointed in how we played there consistently. And so we've got to improve there if we're going to have any chance of having any type of win.
Jamie Chadwell, speaking yesterday about the offensive line, I don't think it's unfound for him to be critical of him. Bill Durkin's one of the best offensive line coaches who is, and we've had one of his former players, Philip Doss, who worked for us and interned with us over the first half of the calendar year, mentioned, it thinks very highly of him, and he's regarded as one of the better offensive line coaches. So when criticizing the offensive line, whether it's us or Jamie Chadwell, I don't think it's unfounded. I think it's reasonable. You want your offensive line to set the intensity and tone for that game. And when Jamie Chadwell was critical of that and critical of the returning players on the offensive line, to an extent, he is calling out guys like an Aaron Fenimore, who is expected to take on a leadership role. Now, I think Liberty will play that way. I think there's enough pride in that unit. I do expect it, but I don't think it's unbalanced and unfounded at all, because having watched that game over at Williams Stadium, it never felt like Liberty was going to lose, but it felt like they were just kind of trudging in the mud, so to speak. There wasn't a lot of oomph and pizzazz and zip until the fourth quarter when they got that touchdown run from the freshman whose name conveniently escapes me right now. But when you talk about what Liberty finally did, Evan Dickens, thank you, transfer running back from Georgia. When Dickens finally scored, it broke things up. But up until that point, kind of felt very meh for Liberty. And that's where these are correctable issues. Like, the intensity, the effort, and the attitude, I don't think were bad. There's a difference between you're there, but you just need a little bit more oomph and light under your fire behind you, versus last year where clearly there was more going on beyond the scenes. I don't get the impression that's the case with the Flames, but I think it's reasonable if you're Jamie Chadwell. First of all, you can use last year as a carrot to anybody who returned, because they wanted to return and they probably wanted to correct what happened last year. And second of all, just bringing up the idea of intensity and crispness when everyone knows that was an issue last year, I think it's the right button to push if you're Jamie Chadwell, considering what happened last year and that a lot of the returning players want to rectify that. Part of your job as a coach to know what button to push, TJ.
No, I agree. And I would argue the Flames have one of the toughest matchups in the Commonwealth outside of VT and Vandy, because Liberty struggled against Jacksonville State last year. They lost to Jacksonville State. And this is a team that didn't lose a lot of players either. So you got to keep in mind, this is a team that's going to come in swinging hard against Liberty. And this isn't Maine, so Liberty has to get crisper. They have to do better, or this is going to be in a loss column.
Funny you bring up the word crisp.
I mean, I hope so. I mean, and what you're hoping the chump is from really more of a crispness. Oh, okay, sorry, execution. Where all right, now you've seen it under the lights. You know how a game day roll. All the things that they're due for them. Now you've experienced that. So now you hope there's a comfortableness now that this is how we prepare. This is how a game day goes. All those things. I mean, I hope so. I mean, and what you're.
So that's the point for Jamie Chadwell on that. And what we're bringing up is, the fact that Liberty, they're just little things to iron out. If you have preseason football, you can work your way through this. There's none of that in college. And by the way, if you look at the big levels of sports, college has the most roster transfer in terms of the percentage of roster that you're transferring over from year one to year two. I get it. In high school, it's kind of cyclical from classes, but a lot of players that are replacing them in high school, for the most part, are developed internally within a program. So even when you call up JV players, there's system familiarity. There's an understanding that's passed down of here's how you have to elevate yourself in off-season conditioning and what you do, particularly if you're not playing a winter or a spring sport. And even if you are trying to juggle those two things because you care about being the best that you can possibly be at your particular craft. So college is the one where it's not. And the pros, you've got most of these guys under contract. That's a novel concept for college. God bless us if we ever get to that day. Dear Lord, please do. I know there's some folks that hate the idea of, labor, and generally speaking, I'm very much, anti-union myself, but when it comes to college sports, I think there might be a little hole in my thinking for why it's valid. But for the Liberty Flames and these teams, you're going to see a lot of that. So it's controlling the effort and the attitude in the right manner. Speaking of controlling what you can control, you can't control the prices that's going on or tariffs or anything else like that, but you can control making sure that you get the best deal on items at InsaneRadioDeals.com. So many great deals still. Liberty Flames tickets to home football games at InsaneRadioDeals.com. And we might have a little special for those that are open to those season tickets for the remainder left. because we've got something that we're going to kind of concoct in the next couple of days. But food, the Caribbean Jerk Pot, Donnie D's Bagels and Deli, the Yard on 5th Street. It's one of your favorites, TJ. Downtown Cairo, JD's Cafe, all the great food specials you want, plus so much more, like tickets for the playoffs for the Lynchburg Hillcats with a $5 coupon off when you spend $20 or more at the Hillcat store. They all await you at InsaneRadioDeals.com. So a little extra incentive for those that want to go see the Lynchburg Hillcats in the playoffs. Meanwhile, speaking of changes that have gone on for Liberty women's basketball, that's the other Into the Weeds segment that we get to repeat, at least getting into the weeds on this.
The haters say we get into the weeds. They may even say we get into the weed.
Smoke weed every day.
Nah, we love getting into the weeds to discuss some cool sports details here in the Fast Lane.
So looking at Liberty women's basketball, they made the change from Carrie Green to Alexis Sherrard as their new head coach. And we did a TroStall.com fast take that dropped earlier today at Fastlane, Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. This is a calculated move. When you have a coach that doesn't retire at the end of the season, the way that Carrie Green did, there's whether it's his desire to get Alexis Sherrard, the head coaching candidate, an opportunity at Liberty because it's so late in the process, you almost by default have to keep somebody internally. Maybe that's the case. I don't know Carrie Green well enough to comment one way or the other. Jon Manson might be able to chime in on that. But I'll also say this. Liberty's in an interesting spot. Men's basketball has kind of perfected this, relatively speaking. You know, I don't think Bridget McKay would think it's perfected, but based on what you can do, leveraging relationships to retain talent in an era where some players are just flat out going to go for the money, but some are willing to sacrifice more money to stay at Liberty because of relationships. That's more prevalent now with the coaching change, just generally speaking, from Carrie Green, who had a successful run, got the Flames back to the women's basketball tournament on the cusp of a first-round upset at Kentucky. And they only lost Asia Broom, ironically, who transferred to Kentucky. Wonder what might have been said to her before or after that game in Kentucky. Just curious. Or maybe to her handlers or people around her. But, you know, hey, good luck proving that. I get it. It happens everywhere. It's kind of the nature of college sports. But for Liberty, no, just because they're making a calculated move, and this seems like it was set up in that regard, it's still possible that this was the wise move for the Liberty Flames. First of all, the timing of it makes sense. But second of all, it's having a level of plan. Now, I don't know whether this is going to work out or not, but here's what was said about by Alexis Sherrard on a number of different things. One of which is having to use this as an opportunity and his taking over to stay ahead of the reality of the transfer portal, which could have impacted Liberty women's basketball.
The most important thing our staff is focusing on is cultivating relationships, obviously player development. We're here to win basketball games and just building that family tradition because you can only control what we can control. And I think relationship with our players, continuity, sisterhood, building champions for Christ, and then let the chips fall where they may.
So part of it is that for Alexis Sherrard. Now, he seemed a little tense at the press conference yesterday, understandable for taking over that role, but you know, he comes across as engaging, seems like a genuine person, which does matter, I think probably more than ever in women's basketball versus men's. Not that there's not transfer portal and NIL, but I think there's a relationship element there, whereas men's basketball is much more just business and transactional the way things have unfolded. Not saying either one is bad, not begrudging anybody, but that's just the reality of the setup. But you put that together, and there's staff familiarity, including the fact that, again, if you're going to bring on a coach like Alexis Sherrard, and the jury is, I'd say reasonably to say, is still out on whether he's successful or not. The jury's out on that, but when you have Alexis Sherrard come in, one of the assets is having multiple coaches who have head coaching experience to help guide you along this path, and coaches who are familiar with the system, which means they're less likely to be undermining you to either get the job if you fail and have their own chances at an interim coach, or looking just to flat out use this as a leverage point. Not that it may not happen, but it's not the solo goal of the coaches, so you've got a chance to really leverage those relationships.
Well, I may be a first-year head coach, but I like to consider myself a wise one because I have Brad, who has head coaching experience, Dan Lumpkin, who's had head coaching experience, and Katie Finkster, who's had head coaching experience. So I'm trying to surround myself with head coaches who've had that experience. And I think as we put our minds together, that's only a recipe for success.
You know, Ed, I think this honestly helps Liberty having former head coaches on the roster. And I'll tell you real quickly why, because now that Sherrard, being a first-year head coach, has wisdom from all three of them, where Green won't be there to give it to him. I think that'll help him a lot in the long run. Plus, it'll help for these ladies to stay away from the transfer portal maybe and want to stay with the team with a coach that wants to learn, wants to connect, and is willing to bring in people with higher knowledge than him into the program. So we haven't seen any transfers yet. Not yet anyway. So I'll take that as a plus. No immediate transfer.
No, and I think that's good. And I mean, there's still a window to transfer, even if it's from a head coach to an interim coach. And you've got the opportunity to do that. But I get this, and I'll say this. If you're going to make the transition, maybe there was some learning that went on in reverse. We've talked about the praise of Liberty basketball, men's basketball, and the connection to Tony Bennett, which is totally reasonable. But Tony Bennett's timing from just a raw basketball program standpoint was not ideal last year. And I get it, again, in the men's game, you transfer that close or you leave that close to the season, but it's not like it stopped it from happening. Christian Bliss was, I'll use air quotes for this, injured seemingly throughout the season. But the coaching staff and Ron Sanchez, now at Baylor, mentioned he was clear to play. Then there was Justin Worley, who transferred from Florida State. And I'll give Worley at least some credit. When the coaching change was made, he just flat out said, I'm out of here. I'm going to go to Gonzaga in redshirt. At least he made the decision, hey, I don't want to be a part of this. I'm out of there, rather than kind of, I'm going to waffle, but I really don't want to play. Maybe somebody's telling me to do this, but stick around for the free meals and workouts. I mean, look, I'm not saying that happened with Bliss, but I'm saying this type of stuff happens when you're dealing with agents in college athletics, which is just the reality. So I give credit in that regard. But yeah, timing is very important for this, TJ. And maybe there's a level of learning from that where, if you believe you've got a head coach in Alexis Sherrard at Liberty where there's trust already with the players and you're ready to make that transition, doing it now and at least getting a little bit of a ramp up. And again, I think the value of having 3 former head coaches is not that, we're going to call Kerry Green up the next time something goes bad. Like if the wisdom's there, great. But some of this is also, if you're Sherrard, you got to learn this stuff on the fly, but still having other people in your office who may not be as tied to the program or understand that Alexis Sherrard wants to do a lot of the similar things, but wants to put his own stamp on this. But because of that, hey, they might understand and empathize with Sherrard of trying to put his own stamp on a program, but also being able to say, hey, as a former head coach or as a coach myself, I can offer X, Y, or Z in terms of nuggets to help.
I'll top off your glass with this, and then I'll completely shut up. I will say this. I think Tony Bennett's dropping out at the last minute really hurt a lot of relationships, whereas Kerry Green, a source told me that he has had health issues, and he was very vocal with his coaching staff about it. So people probably knew in advance this was going to happen, whereas Tony Bennett woke up one day respectfully and said, this just isn't the game I remember. I think it's time I leave,
Yeah. And, I mean, look, and again, I don't have any issues with the departure of Tony Bennett. I never have. I still think he's a class guy. I don't know if there's an ideal way to go about this. And I genuinely think, there had to have been a straw that was the straw that broke the camel's back right up at the start of the season. It may have been a player wanting more money and realizing, if we can't do that, he's going to go. And it's just like, look, this is too chaotic for me. Of all the criticism that's been levied against Carla Williams, for example, as the UVA athletic director, and what could have been done differently? Bronco Mendenhall departing, Tony Bennett departing, Brian O'Connor of baseball departing as well. The O'Connor one, I think, is fair game to criticize. If he kept feeling like he had to keep asking for stuff, eventually just got tired of it, I get it. Like, that's all in Virginia. You got to be proactive and have a vision for that. Bronco Mendenhall, I know there were some desired staff changes that Virginia wanted that he didn't want. I think there were some legitimate concerns, including the fact that this all came after that absurd throw to the left tackle against Virginia Tech. And I don't care what the players say. That's the dumbest play call in that situation. You have 3 to 4 NFL caliber wide receivers, including Dontavian Wicks, and you're running a pass to the left tackle because, I'm so smart. I came up with this. Look, sometimes you're so smart, you're dumb. Like, again, by the way, before we head out of here,
Time to take a detour in the fast lane.
I don't care if I upset people in my family, whatever. Most people know I have one sibling, my brother, with whom I'm tight. I have another that's had a substance abuse challenge, and it's just out there. My dad has this ridiculous idea of everybody back together. And I'm like, look, when the substance abuse challenge gets subsided for professional treatment and a 12-step program, I'm all for seeing this particular sibling of mine who has a substance abuse challenge. But if that person's not committed to that and has a history of insulting people when they're under the influence, great. But this person might have also had a dog. And this person talked about how smart their dog was. Their dog was so smart that when the dog was at our house visiting, the dog left our house, even though the dog's owner, my sibling, was at the house and went back to the restaurant across the busy street where we were eating. And then the sibling might have said, well, it's because the dog is so smart. He knew where we were. No, the dog is dumb. That's a dumb idea. And Virginia throwing to the left tackle when you have 4 pro caliber wide receivers, God rest Lavelle Davis's soul, but he, Dontavian Wicks, and others, that is a dumb idea. You're getting so smart, it's stupid. And that is the example of that to answer the Three Stooges question.
Are you that dumb?
So anyway,
Robert and I should have been head coach of Mendenhall.
After Ed's potentially unnecessary detour, let's get back on the road in the fast lane.
yes, indeed. So we have to get back on the road in the fast lane. And I did cut you off, TJ, but I just got
That's
so
fine.
fired up because every time I think of it, it's so ridiculous. So anyway, to wrap up the point, Carla Williams could have prevented a lot of things, but Tony Bennett's departure was not one of them. But there are still lessons that could be learned from his departure, like Liberty and the timing of their coaching transition from Kerry Green, who may have been ready to step away, to Alexis Sherrard, who is a younger blood, fresh energy, and might be ready behind the scenes, but just needs that opportunity. That's where it all makes sense. Jon Manson of ASeaofRed.com is going to provide levity on that. When we return in the fast lane, though, lessons learned from week 1 in high school football. That plus the big story, the big losing streak is no mas. That when we return with Ben Cates of NewsAdvance.com before Jon Manson on the Liberty Flames. Here in the fast lane, VTR and Sports app, and ask that smart speaker, open VTR and Sports.
Hey, small to medium business owners, if you're frustrated with slow IT support, high costs, or paying for services you just don't use, it's time for a change. Hi, I'm Colt with We Fix Stupid Computers. We provide reliable on-site and remote support tailored for businesses just like yours. And we go beyond just fixing problems. We empower your staff with real tech knowledge so they can work smarter every day. From repairs to training to full IT support, we save you time, stress, and money. Call We Fix Stupid Computers, 434-525-8590, where smart support meets real savings.
Some journeys start small, with small pause and big purpose.
Look how it'll fly, you sweet girl.
Every great partnership begins with the first step,
Bella, let's go.
guiding them through the world so one day they can guide someone through life. With shared experience, confidence grows, and the path becomes clear. It takes time, patience, and love. But the reward lasts a lifetime.
Hey, good girl, Bella.
You don't just raise a puppy. You raise a future. Become a Dogs Inc. puppy raiser. Give a dog a purpose. Give someone hope.
Learn more at dogsinc.org.
Just like summer, the deals at InsaneRadioDeals.com are heating up. Check out these great deals on food. $50 gift cards to the Caribbean Jerk Pot. $50 gift card to the Yard on 5th Street. $25 gift card to Ballad Brewing. $25 gift card to Donnie D's Bagels and Deli. $50 gift card to Downtown Cairo. All these great food deals and much more at InsaneRadioDeals.com. Check these deals out right now before they run out.
Ron Rivera, Cal Golden Bears GM and former Washington Commanders and Carolina Panthers coach, joined the Fast Lane and discussed why he'd like to see one transfer portal window in college football.
I would like to see it limited to one portal. I really do. And I'd like to see the same thing with the recruiting process from high school to college, because what happens is we've created too many circumstances where you're basically spending money against yourself. With 2 portals, you can sign a young person in January, and then at the end of May, it opens again. And kids that signed, student athletes that signed in January could turn around and sign again. And if somebody offers them more money, now you're competing against yourself. Do you want to spend that to retain the player? So what we've done is we've driven our costs up. Should there really be 2 portals? The only people that really benefit beyond the student athlete are, honestly, the agents. And some of them are the ones that are creating this havoc as to where do we fit.
The Fast Lane, weekday afternoons, 5 to 6 p.m., VTR and Sports app, 93.3 FM.
Check out every game of March Madness on VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, 1320 AM, open VTRN Sports on your smart speaker, and stream on the VTRN Sports app.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the fast lane.
It's the lead story. May not be the lead team, probably won't be leading the Seminole District standings by the end of this season, although they have a 1-0 record to their name, which is where we begin our chat with Ben Cates of NewsAdvance.com, who joins us today here in the Fast Lane. Ben, great to be speaking with you. We'll start off before we get to your overview of what we learned from week 1 of high school football, and you've got an article on that at NewsAdvance.com. The Liberty Minutemen, 37-game losing streak. We did our TrostLaw.com fast takes on Seminole District football previews, and for Liberty, we touched on the importance of starting fast, as did their coaching staff, including Coach Womack at the Seminole District football media days. How big is this, though, for Liberty on a big picture level and on a micro level to break this 37-game losing streak and have at least a chance to say, hey, we're resetting the attitude in Bedford?
Yeah, you called it, Ed. You are the guy who called it. You talked about Liberty having to start fast and that they really needed to do this before the Seminole District slate began. They needed to get that monkey off the back, and they did. So kudos to you for calling it. You're the Bedford guy out there. You know your Bedford football. Just a wonderful I think story to end a 37-game losing streak. I mean, any time that you do something like that, it's a really good story. And you obviously you hate it, especially in this instance with the team being in our market that in William Campbell that gets to be the team that ends the streak. You don't want to do that. You don't want to be that team. But it still is a good story for Liberty. And the way that they did it too. I mean, just a team that 2 seasons ago couldn't score. I mean, scored 6 points at the last possible moment of the season in the 10th game 2 seasons ago. And then last year, the offense was a little bit better, but you still didn't score very often. And so to come out and score the way that Liberty did and put up that amount of points, I mean, what a remarkable kind of performance. And it's something those kids will never forget either. I mean, they'll never forget getting that first win in their high school career, especially the seniors who have been at it all 4 years, to have never have won. And then to win on opening night with a new kind of interim coach that, bringing a lot of energy to the team. And for years people have talked about, well, we're going to end it this year. We're going to end it this year. And now for it to happen, it has to be thrilling for those guys.
No doubt it does. And you have your article at newsadvance.com. It's still up and it's still worth a read from Ben Cates of newsadvance.com. And I get it. We broadcast Jefferson Forest Cavalier football presented by TrostLaw.com. Liberty is one of their rivals. Stanton River, which is, by the way, 6:30 airtime this Friday, is another one from Bedford County. But, I mean, you don't want to see a program where the players put that much effort in and never get anything for it. How much of that part for Liberty is just the fact that it's natural to exhale, and we'll get a chance to look at what's ahead in the future, but just for Liberty that now they can focus, instead of getting that monkey off their back and that level of pressure, now they can almost hit a reset and say, all right, here's what we need to do. Since the win thing is done and you'd love to win more this year, now we can focus on these building blocks to be a better program each and every week and be able to transfer that to players upon future years.
I think so. I think it's a moment that you only go up from here, and whether that translates to another win this year, 2 or 3 next year. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, but it is something to build on. And I gotta say, like, a few years ago when those kids started losing and things were really, really bad, it was just like a shell-shocked kind of look on their face to be like, this is what high school football is. And now, they've gone from that to, oh yeah, we lose all the time. And now they've gone to, hey, we can win. And that's something that's important to learn in high school, and it's something important to learn in life too.
It's valuable lessons. It's great to see. And just, I mean, you may not be a fan of Liberty High School in Bedford, but the idea of a 37-game losing streak being snapped is as big of a story, and it's worthy of being the first topic we covered with Ben Cates of newsadvance.com today in the Fast Lane. Another one, Salem. They get fourth downs all night long, but ultimately EC Glass comes up with a stop late in that game when it mattered most and secures the victory. I know this was a Glass program where you kind of, I'm not saying that, Coach Jamar Lovelace was on the hot seat, but it felt like the natives were getting a little restless and wanting to see EC Glass be able to assert themselves. How much of a step in the right direction is this, even though this is not the Salem team that featured the running back Peyton Lewis at Georgia and the linebacker Peyton Lewis at Tennessee and the linebacker Chris Cole at Georgia?
Well, I mean, it's a big win for Glass on opening night anyway. I know a lot of people, were wanting to see Glass, maybe not as happy with that 5 and 6 year last year. I hope that Jamar wasn't listening to a lot of those people, or maybe he was listening to them a lot. Either way, maybe good for you to take it all in, or dismiss it. But I think it's a really good win for Glass. It was kind of a shocking win in a way, just because you expect, there are really high expectations on a team like Salem. And we've talked about the fact that there are high expectations on a program like Glass as well, and there are. But at Salem, I mean, especially coming in opening night, it's a program and it's a place and it's a stadium that's full of people, and there are really, really high expectations on a lot of those kids. So to come in and defeat Salem on that field on opening night is a really big deal. And I think it kind of solidifies that, when Jamar Lovelace is able to get things the way that he wants them to be, and he can get the right people in place and has really good personnel, that good things can happen. And I really expect that to be the case this week, especially coming in another really tough assignment with PH. Just because you beat Salem doesn't mean a thing this week, because you've got a really tough PH team coming in with a really speedy receiver that's got, a Syracuse commit. And so, Glass is going to have its hands full again. And so it's another week when, Glass will have to prove itself.
Yeah, I mean, they'll have to figure that out. Meanwhile, proving themselves. How reasonable is it? I know you wrote this up in your what we learned from week 1 of high school football column at newsadvance.com, Ben, but Appomattox and Brookville, the game that our own TJ Wilkerson, by the way, was covering, as we're glad to talk with TJ, but although we're really talking with Ben today, sorry, TJ, but Ben gets the coverage today here in the Fast Lane.
Totally fine with that.
Well, we're glad you are. Is it a spot where both teams win in the sense that Appomattox seemingly looks like a team that they struggled last year in the transition out of the Doug Smith era. They looked like a team this year that could take that step forward. Meanwhile, Brookville looks like a team that you have a 20-3 lead at halftime, but you have to learn how to close those games out. And it seemed like Friday was a step towards that for the Bees.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right about that. And shout out to TJ, by the way. You do a great job, TJ. Appomattox really shocked, I think, a lot of people in the second half. Brookville really, really played a really great opening half, 2 quarters there. Ended up leaving some points probably on the board. And you got to feel like if you're Brookville folks, that you probably left a couple out there, even though you're happy with the win. But this is also you can't deny the fact that this is an Appomattox team that really came alive in the second half and showed a lot of fire that it hasn't shown in quite a while, frankly. We talked in our story and with Coach Costello at Appomattox about 2019, which was a state championship year for Appomattox, 5 out of 6 when they were winning all those state championships. And he was talking about, there was times in 2019 where we didn't even show that fire, where we got down early in game or late in games and early in the season, and we weren't able to come back, and things really ballooned. And this year, at least in game 1, they didn't let that happen. And so, got down and really had a really good second half. The defense really came alive. I felt like it was a Costello-like defense. Some people will remember those defenses from Appomattox's days when they were really, really good. And so I think this is a program that's going to be in just fine shape. Another tough Seminole District assignment for Appomattox this week in Rustburg, though, with the Battle of the Lantern. I think it'll be a good one.
Ben, we'll wrap it up on this, and we're going to kind of tie what you did, what we learned from week 1 of high school football, that article, to one you've got coming out about Heritage. And yes, some shameless self-promotion for Jefferson Forest Cavalier football presented by TroySlaw.com, because JF next week will be at Mount Airy, who has put out Tyler Mason, the running back, who's a reserve for Virginia Tech, Donovan Green, the starting wide receiver for the Hokies. They're products of Mount Airy. Meanwhile, Heritage is at Bridgeport, who is a perennial Class 3 champion in West Virginia. And of course, LCA, their winning streak was snapped in pretty convincing fashion after that first quarter was tight. 42-3 was the final. Ironton over LCA. What advantage is there? As challenging as it is for these district schools to be all traveling out of state from the Seminole District this year, what advantage is there that they're all playing stout competition, and theoretically it's a different look, and maybe different looks, but what can prepare them for the Seminole District and what they hope to be play beyond that?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting time of year for all of those teams. LCA ran into a really a huge buzzsaw this week, and so we'll find out coming up a little bit more how LCA kind of responds to that. And then Heritage, I was talking to some people from Bridgeport today, both from the school and from the newspaper up there. And I think the general consensus is that people are excited about this matchup. I think people are excited to see kind of what Bridgeport has to offer, a really good team from Virginia coming in and playing at Bridgeport. And then Heritage people are really, really up for the challenge and know that it's going to be a tough one when you're facing a perennial powerhouse like Bridgeport that has won 11 state titles. And so that's another big one. I'm not going to be able to be at that game. I do look forward to hearing about it. I hope to be at that Mount Airy game next week. I think that will be a really good one. Two really interesting run-based teams there that really like to ground and pound or three yards in a cloud of dust, or what Brad Bradley says, slobber knocker. So that'll be a good slobber knocker between JF and Mount Airy. I think I plan on being there. I hope to anyway, and look forward to both of those out-of-state games this week.
Next time our own Ty Tracy is with us in the fast lane, we'll have to ask him how often he's heard the term slobber knocker from Brad Bradley. Meanwhile, Ben has heard it plenty of times, along with other great sayings from so many great high school football and high school athletic coaches here in our footprint. Ben, thank you for your time today in the fast lane. I know we touched on the Seminole District. We owe the Dogwood District some time, which we'll get to at another point. But thank you for your time in the fast lane. Always love catching up, and we'll do it again in another week or so.
Thank you, Ed. TJ, thank you.
Indeed. Ben Cates with us here in the fast lane. We will pivot off of that to the Liberty Flames. So Jon Manson from AseaofRed.com, he's going to join us next, and we'll discuss whether we're off base or on base, the improvement from week 1 to week 2. Are we overemphasizing the need for that? Plus, a real fascinating story when it comes to the Liberty Flames football team. The unfortunate, but probably the right call, retirement, medical disqualification was the term, of quarterback Ryan Berger. I've had 3 concussions before. Thankfully, they've all been in the past over a long period of time. High school, one of them. College was one of them, and even afterwards as well. 3 to 4, actually. Shows my memory is negatively impacted by them. Jokes on that aside, it's smart for Ryan Berger to hang it up. I think it's a wise move there, but an interesting angle to that. Plus, Jon Manson with his perspective next here in the Fast Lane.
It's so worth the drive to big savings at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. Shop local and save more with exceptional service and selection. Your search stops here with over 900 pre-owned vehicles to choose from, plus a huge selection of new car brands in Southwest Virginia. Honda, Hyundai, Toyota, Subaru, Kia, Chevrolet, Mitsubishi, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. 11 new car brands, 900 used vehicles, all in one location. The Sheeler Motor Mile gives you more choices with pre-owned cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. Many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. More than any other dealer in the area, plus exceptional service, selection, savings, and financing options, and top dollar for your trade. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume with 11 new car brands and over 900 used vehicles, all in one location. And we're proud to support our local schools and community. The Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier car dealer, locally and family-owned for over 50 years. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Warm weather means traveling. Hi, I'm Randy Trost from Trost Law with a couple of safety reminders. Always wear your seatbelt. Don't drive distracted or impaired. And remember, it's better to safely arrive a little later than being in an auto accident. Those things can make a big difference between a fun family trip or a painful alternative. At Trost Law, I hope you never need our services, but if you do, we're here to help you at 777-HURT or trostlaw.com.
Relaxing in a radiant sunroom, enjoying the breeze in a screen room, or the sun on the deck. No matter the weather, customize how you feel whenever you want. Call Collins Custom Builders. All sunrooms, screen rooms, and decks are built by Collins employees, many with decades of experience, and some who've been with Collins Custom Builders since 1989. That means workers who embrace accountability and are committed to crafting your vision of the perfect sunroom, screen room, or deck. See some of their projects at collinscustombuilders.com, then call Collins Custom Builders.
Summertime means hot temperatures, but hot deals are at InsaneRadioDeals.com. Check out great deals from the Lynchburg Hillcats, both general public and premium reserve tickets at the site right now. Try scuba classes from Aqua Trek Adventures. Plus, one of the best deals of all, Linux and Lynchburg bed liners, a $700 value for only $567. Hot deals during this hot summer at InsaneRadioDeals.com.
So there's this old axiom that we get to discuss on this trostlaw.com fast take that's relative to football. The biggest progress is made between week 1 and week 2 of the college football season. Even in high school and maybe to an extent the pros, that axiom holds true. But it's more prevalent than ever in college because that's the spot where there's the biggest amount of roster turnover from week 1 to week 2. And a lot of teams may have had good opening drives to their game, but then a lot of sluggishness after that. Are they making progress? That's the big thing to watch in week 2.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
Medically disqualified. Never heard that phrase before, but it makes sense. That's what Jamie Chadwell mentioned about Reese Smith no longer being able to play football for the Liberty Flames. Not Reese Smith, Ryan Berger no longer being able to play for the Liberty Flames. Now, we had asked Reese Smith about what it's like having battled multiple injuries himself and what he said and has said to Ryan Berger in their unique relationship. Is Reese Smith kind of the one guy that probably can relate to what Ryan Berger is going through? Not directly, because Berger's issues have been concussions, and that's why you're medically disqualified, and totally reasonable and understandable with those not to be messed with. But Reese Smith has had a unique relationship as well with him. And concussions are not something to be messed around with. I mentioned I've had some high school and college and even one after college, and it does mess with you. And I mean, it's interesting. Again, my dad is a smart, great man. This is not going to make him look the best, but it is what it is. I don't think he could quite, my dad's old school, so I don't think he could quite understand this. My brother's a wrestling coach in Oregon, or was, and you cannot make your wrestlers better unless you practice with them. And my brother had sustained upwards of 8 concussions. And finally, the doctor just said, look, if you get another one, you may not be able to function cognitively and live a normal lifestyle. At which point my brother's like, yeah, I don't want that happening. I'm out. And, my dad is learning to come around to understanding how head injuries are not something to be messed with after the 6th, 7th, and 8th one. And as much as my dad loves wrestling, and I don't know if you dealt with this, TJ, a lot of wrestling parents and wrestling supporters are so blindly loyal to the sport and I get it's a different level of toughness. And it's not the glory of football or lacrosse, because I'll be blunt. I respect wrestling. I did it. It's just not aesthetically appealing on the same sense. I'm a runner. Running is not as aesthetically appealing as traditional sports. It takes a lot, but it's just not the same. You're not going to sit there and get people watching it left and right. So they're very protective of their sport. But at some point, there's a raw reality of concussions that you just can't mess around with them over a period of time. And if you want to be like people that have dealt with CTE and the negative consequences, we've seen that more than ever. Sadly, we've got negative examples, which is why Ryan Berger's decision is the smart and commendable one, but it doesn't mean it's any less challenging. And that's where this comes in from Liberty wide receiver Reese Smith.
Yeah, for sure. Ryan's one of my good friends. Ever since he got here, we kind of, connected in a way. And, when he had that injury in the Bahamas Bowl and stuff and didn't go through the spring, I didn't go through the spring either. So we hung out a lot. And, the biggest thing is just encouraging him, keeping his head up. It's tough. I just told him, I was like, dude, what you're going through, I haven't been through the head injuries like you have, but I've been knocked down and knocked down again. Like, you can't let this game just knock you down your knees and you not be able to get back up. There's so much more to life than just football than you even realize. And it's hard for us to realize that because this has been our life for I'm pretty much ever since we were born. But he's in a good headspace, and I just every time I'm seeing him, just try to bring him up, and I think a lot of the guys do that as well.
That's Reese Smith speaking about the injury to Ryan Berger. And what really was amazing about that is just the fact that Liberty has carved out a role for Ryan Berger to be a student assistant on the program. First of all, it's a chance to figure out whether he'd want to get into coaching and maybe a grad assistant role and beyond. Second of all, the fact that he's kept dealing with concussions speaks a lot to his dedication and desire to do that. But it's a sad story on the one sense that the career ends, but it's the why story. We kind of started getting word of that. We had a source who dropped that knowledge to us in the press box. Well, not in the press box, but near the press box at the game this past weekend. That watch out, there might be some news coming out about Ryan Berger because he's had so many concussions, and turns out that individual is very well sourced. Much like our next guest, Jon Manson from ASeaofRed.com, who's extremely well sourced himself and drops great knowledge, not just there, but on the latest of Sea of Red podcast, recapping game 1 and looking ahead to game 2, which we'll do in a moment, John. But first of all, look, this is Liberty where you can get religious, but God put certain people in certain positions and you can't always explain it and understand it. And for Ryan Berger, it seems like having Reese Smith on his team is the right person to be around him, given these challenges. And frankly, the Liberty program where he can at least have some kind of role and be around the game when he can't play. It's a challenge, but it might also explain from a football sense why Liberty kept as many quarterbacks as they did during the offseason, knowing that a number of them have injury histories. And sadly for Ryan Berger, it's already knocked that from 5 to 4 on the depth chart.
Yeah, it was something we talked about, if you remember, back during training camp about, how many of these 5 quarterbacks who all have eligibility remaining would remain on the roster going into 2026. And like you just said, it's already down to 4. But you hate to see that for Ryan Berger. I can't say that I'm overly shocked that it happened. He had a concussion in the regular season finale last year in the game against Sam Houston. That was a game that, he was filling in for Caden Salter, who was injured, got injured the previous week. And, he went down in that game with an injury, missed most of the month of December of practice time as he was recovering from that injury before the Bahamas Bowl, which, obviously Salter at that point in time had gone into the portal. So Berger was the starter in the Bahamas Bowl. And then he got another concussion there in the first week of January at the Bahamas Bowl. And that caused him to miss all of spring practice. So I had heard rumblings of there potentially being individuals, doctors, whoever it may be, family members maybe, talking to Ryan about potentially hanging it up even before the summer and training camp got here. He obviously did not and went forward with attempting to get back to the football field, which he did, right? He had a really strong training camp and pushed Ethan Vasco even to make Coach Chadwell delay naming a starter for about a week. That's just how close those two were in that competition. And obviously, Berger got hurt again in practice last week. I haven't heard anyone say officially it was a concussion. It certainly could have been, but it sounded like he was at least having some symptoms related to that. So, you hate to see it, kind of like Reese Smith was talking about is, these guys, grow up playing football, and football's such a huge part of their lives. And when it's taken from you prematurely, sometimes it's hard to recover from that. So, I think it'll be good for him to be around this program, at least for this season, to continue to be around the game, around some of his friends and teammates and the coaches as well, too, as he, kind of moves into this next stage of his life, which, all these players are at one point in time. I know they all have dreams of playing the NFL, and some of them, likely will, but, still at some point in time, no matter how good you are, how talented you are, your playing days come to an end at some point in time.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about it, and it's unfortunate. Now, you get a chance if you're Ryan Berger to be part of the coaching staff. There's a football side of this, though, for the Liberty Flames. How much does this back up the fact that now all of a sudden Liberty, you got Ethan Vasco as the quarterback. He's the starter. We'll see how things go against Jacksonville State. But now all of a sudden you've got a quarterback room where the hierarchy looks different with Michael Merdinger as the second option. You've got Houck and Bradford who are battling it out as well. But all of a sudden, you had one quarterback with injuries. You've got others with a history that if you're Liberty, you have a physical offense the way they do where the quarterback runs the ball. Quarterback depth, as important as it was, it's also something to monitor in the future about the need to have that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And, Vasco, looking at the way he was playing this past Saturday against Maine, we talked about this on the See Red podcast as well as that you were talking about. He continually kind of, lowers his shoulder to pick up an extra yard or two. He's just a physical runner when he is running the ball, whether it's on, design QB runs or when he's escaping the pocket or, on the option plays. And wouldn't be shocked if, he does get banged up at some point in time. It's a long season, at least 12 games. And whether it's just for a play here or there or a series or a half a game or multiple games, wouldn't be shocking for him to miss some time. And you got to have a capable backup. So going from a guy like Berger, who, like we were talking about, pushed Vasco to be the starter up until the, week one, to now a guy, Michael Merdinger, who certainly has some talent, has arm talent as well, too. You could see that kind of popped a little bit in that Fan Appreciation Day scrimmage a few weeks ago during training camp. And so he's certainly got some talent. But again, I mean, he's a redshirt freshman, only played the one game for North Carolina last year in the bowl game, which he went in after an injury to their starter for that game. But, if Merdinger has to be called on at some point in time, he doesn't have those previous experiences to fall back on like a guy like Berger does. And even more so, I mean, Coach Chadwell was talking about it in a press conference earlier this week that you got to have your third quarterback ready too. I mean, whether that's Houck or Jaden Bradford, you got to make sure you figure out who that guy is. And that's something that sounds like they're trying to figure out this week, just in case you were to have to go to, your emergency third guy. So it definitely changes the quarterback room. But if you're a Liberty fan, Liberty coach, Liberty player, you definitely want to make sure Vasco stays healthy.
Jon Manson stepping into the fast lane on W227 BG Timberlake, WVGM AM Lynchburg, WMNA Gretna Danville Southside. He's at JC Manson on Twitter, aseaofred.com. And of course, the latest podcast dropped last night. Listen to it however you listen to podcasts. I caught mine this morning, John. From the quarterback room itself, as it relates to action on the field, was it Ethan Vasco that concerned you against Maine? Was it the offensive sluggishness that was seemingly something that Reese Smith touched on? Jamie Chadwell did as well. Where do you look at that matchup against Maine and go, all right, Liberty got out of there. It was a game that you never say was in doubt, but it's not the showing you need against Jacksonville State this weekend.
I mean, I think it comes back, to the offensive line. That's a unit that Liberty has had, a really good offensive line each of the past two seasons under Coach Chadwell and offensive line coach Bill Durkin. And, Coach Chadwell was not quiet about that. He talked in the post game and again on Tuesday during his press conference about the need for that offensive line to take a step up. And, you got a lot of, maybe not a lot, but several new pieces and new names there and guys like a DJ Gath at left guard who, played sparingly last year, but now as a redshirt sophomore stepping into a more prominent role as a starter. And even Aaron Fenimore, I mean, he's team leader and was one of the two guys that Liberty took with them down to Frisco back in the summer to represent the team at Conference USA Media Days. But again, he's only a redshirt sophomore, has that 1 year of playing experience under his belt. But these are some young guys. You need somebody like a Trey Badowski, who's UAB transfer, has been around the game for several years, played a lot of football at the college level to somebody like him or Jack Tucker or Harrison Hayes, two other guys that have been around Liberty for a few years, to take more of a leadership approach and role in that room and help this offensive line kind of grow into themselves early part of the year. And, that schedule ramps up very quickly, going from a Maine team who won 5 games last year in the FCS to the defending conference champs in Conference USA and Jack State this week on the road against a team that took a Big 12 team in UCF to the brink in week 1 Thursday night. So it's going to be a big step up in play for the Flames from where they were last week. And, you can't be sluggish and, go into the fourth quarter with only 7 points, or a team like Jack State has the potential to bury you if that's the case.
Jon, what do you expect to happen Saturday afternoon, just after 12 p.m. Eastern time, when the Flames kick off down at Jacksonville State?
It's a huge litmus test for both teams. In this day and age of the transfer portal and so much roster turnover and, shake up each and every season, like there's so many questions about every team, and it's no different for both Liberty and Jack State. And, for the Gamecocks, not only is it a lot of new personnel, but an entirely new coaching staff as well, too, as Charles Kelly has taken over, a former defensive coordinator at Auburn under Hugh Freeze last year. Guys have been around football for a long time, primarily on the defensive side of the ball as a coach. He began his coaching career at Jack State, and this is his first time though as a head coach. So a lot of question marks as far as just how good of a head coach he is and can be, and how good this Jack State team can be. Can they get back to that level they were under Rich Rod the last 2 years? And then for Liberty, this is a Jack State team that ran for almost 400 yards against them last year in Williams Stadium here in Lynchburg. And, we've heard all camp about, the potential this defense has. Well, they're going to get a big test on Saturday as, and Jack State's got a lot of new pieces there too. They got Cam Cook, a TCU transfer at running back, led the team, the Horned Frogs at TCU last year in rushing, and now he's at Jack State. And then also Gavin Wimsatt, former 4-star recruit, began his career at Rutgers, where he's a multi-year starter. Then he was at Kentucky last year, and now he's at Jack State. And a dual threat guy. They're going to put a lot of pressure on that Liberty defense. It'll be a big test for them, and we'll learn a lot about both of these teams. And I think whoever ends up the winner Saturday afternoon in Jacksonville, Alabama, will be in prime position to go deep into the season in that Conference USA championship race, and maybe one of the early season favorites.
Jon, we'll wrap it up on this, and we'll pivot away from football for a moment. Alexis Sherrard was introduced as the women's basketball coach yesterday. It was announced before then, a couple of days ago, that he would take over for the departing Carrie Green, who had a multi-decade run of excellent accomplishments as the Liberty women's basketball coach. How reasonable is this observation? It was calculated when you consider that this move could have been made in the offseason and you could have had a national search, and instead, by doing it this late, you almost have to go with an in-house candidate. But it also is a logical move when you consider that Sherrard has player familiarity, and they're retaining or adding, both a mix of those, players with or coaches that have 3 different coaches or staff members who have head coaching experience to guide Sherrard on that transition.
Yeah, Sherrard's been around not just Liberty and in the women's basketball team, but Liberty University as a whole. He came to Liberty in Lynchburg a couple decades ago as an assistant on the men's side, and then coaching changed there, and he switched over to the women's team, and has been helping Coach Carrie Green for the last 19 years. Been a part of a lot of success, a lot of wins, and he's going to try to carry that mantle on. You heard Coach Green talking about that recently. How he's just trying to pass that baton off to Coach Sherrard, and it's not Coach Sherrard doing it by himself either, right? This is his first time as a collegiate head coach, and he's got a lot of experience around him. Returning players, a couple of assistants that played at Liberty as well too, Katie Feenstra most notably, and Emma Hess, who's just been added to the staff too, was part of that conference championship team a year ago. So, Coach Green doesn't leave with the cupboard empty. He kind of goes out on top, even though it was a few months after, that conference championship back in March. But there's pieces there to work with, and Coach Sherrard, I'm sure, is poised and ready for this opportunity to, kind of keep it at that level and keep the Liberty women's basketball program moving forward.
Jon Manson, a SeaofRed.com, with us in the fast lane. The awkward pauses because our own TJ Wilkerson had an Ed move, clumsy, and just knocked over the headset. So I'm like, what in the world just happened there? We lost John. No, we didn't. We lost communication with John. John, it was great communicating with you in the fast lane in all seriousness. Thank you for your time today in the fast lane. It's been great as always to connect with you. Love doing this. Look forward to chatting again soon and wishing you safety in your travels down to Jacksonville, Alabama as you bring us coverage at SeaofRed.com.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for having me on, Ed.
Our pleasure. Jon Manson with us here in the fast lane. And that's how we wrap it up today on the VTR and Sports app presented by ESPN Radio. That when we return tomorrow, 5 to 6 p.m., more on college football, plus some NASCAR talk as well with Dalton Hopkins of FrontStretch.com and college football overview with Oliver Hodgkinson of College Football Network. All of that to come tomorrow. This is the fast lane. You've been listening to it on the VTR and Sports app. And ask that smart speaker, open VTR and Sports.
Cowboys last year in 2024. When you pay that kind of money and you have that